Saudi Arabia was once the definition of an oil kingdom, a nation built on black gold. For decades, the formula worked perfectly. Oil money built cities, funded royal lifestyles, created influence, and turned a desert kingdom into one of the richest countries on earth. But then came a terrifying realization. The world was changing. Electric cars were rising. Renewable energy was becoming cheaper. Climate pressure was growing, and the future suddenly looked uncertain. April 2016, Mohammed bin Salman, then the Deputy Prince of Saudi Arabia, unveils Vision 2030.
It is impossible to overstate how important the changes this man is making.
Groundswell of young Saudis that it was like, go Mohammed, go.
Forget the rest of the country. We don't have a bus service. Can't take a bus in Riyadh.
They're going to need to use the money from that oil to transform themselves again.
Welcome to Sleuthing Scams, and today we will be talking about whether Saudi Arabia is building a city it can't afford. It takes a lot of time, effort, and heart to bring these videos for you, so kindly hit that subscribe button. This was supposed to be the master plan that would save Saudi Arabia from becoming irrelevant in a post-oil world. A complete transformation of the country. A futuristic Saudi Arabia powered not just by oil, but by tourism, technology, entertainment, finance, and innovation. They planned to spend $3 trillion. The reason was simple. Saudi Arabia knew it had a dangerous dependency on oil as the world slowly started moving away from fossil fuels. This fear was not irrational. Analysts have repeatedly warned that the world will reach its oil peak demand in 2030 and after that it will fall. And Saudi Arabia had every reason to panic. In 2016, oil represented 82% of the all Saudi Arabia exports. That is not diversification, that is economic dependence on a single resource. And once demand falls, everything becomes vulnerable. So Saudi Arabia came up with a solution that sounded like science fiction. The plan was one of a kind. The city will be 170-kilometer wall. Not a normal city, not even a megacity. A literal mirrored wall stretching across the desert. Everything would exist in vertical layers. The project sounded less like urban planning and more like something from Blade Runner. But there was a problem from the beginning. All of this vision needed 20% of world steel for complete. That is an insane amount of resources for a single project. Entire nations struggled to secure steel for infrastructure. Saudi Arabia wanted a fifth of global supply for one futuristic dream. And now, years later, reality is starting to hit. Fast forward 10 years, the vision looks clueless itself. The chances of its completion looks lesser than ever. And now they've realized it too. In recent developments, they started making major changes to the original plans. A city was supposed to be 170 kilometers long, will now be just 2.4 kilometers. And instead of 900 million people, they will have 300,000 people. That is not a small adjustment. That is the difference between ambition and reality colliding headfirst. But here's the thing. Most people think NEOM is just the line. It isn't. NEOM is not a single smart city. In fact, this name should be used for a region. There will be many cities, resorts, and other developments in this region. In total, the area of NEOM will be around 26,500 square kilometers. A specific area has been selected for this vision because the climate there is comparatively moderate, and it will be located in the northwestern part of the country. There will be around 10 projects in NEOM. Apart from the huge line city, there is Oxagon, an octagon-shaped floating industrial port that looks like it was designed for a Marvel movie. Then there's Trojena, which is the first major outdoor skiing destination of the Arabian Peninsula. Yes, Saudi Arabia is building a ski resort in the desert, and surprisingly, it has also won the bid to host 2029 Asian Winter Games. Then there's Sindalah, a luxury island destination designed for the global elite. Yachts, luxury hotels, beach clubs, and billionaires. In short, you start realizing that many of these projects feel disconnected from reality. Not because they are impossible technically, but because they seem to exist without a clear economic purpose. And the reason behind this may actually be MBS himself. Saudi Arabia's power structure is highly centralized, and ultimately one man is calling the shots. He just loves science fiction. Thomas Maine, the original architect of the Line City, was prevented even to talk to MBS. According to reports, he wanted to express concerns to the prince about the line's extreme costs and practical limitations. and a project manager of Sindala was removed after they challenged cost estimates. That creates a dangerous culture. When experts become afraid to criticize leadership, projects stop being based on realism and start being based on fantasy, and the costs have spiraled out of control. And now, according to reports, the cost of the project has reached around $8.8 trillion. That number is difficult to even comprehend. For perspective, that is larger than the GDP of almost every country on Earth except the United States and China. And according to reports, the NEOM board will make decisions based on just renderings. That means billion-dollar decisions are allegedly being made based on visual presentations instead of proven economic viability. Now, to understand why this is dangerous, you need to understand Saudi Arabia's economy. Saudi Arabia has been extremely focused on increasing non-oil GDP. One way it tried to do this was through strategic investments via PIF, its sovereign wealth fund. PIF has more than $600 billion in assets. The Public Investment Fund has stakes in global companies, sports, tourism, technology, and infrastructure. It was supposed to become the engine of Saudi Arabia's transformation. But here's the issue. Only 20% of PIF's investments are abroad, which means most of its money is still circulating domestically, rather than generating massive global returns. PIF's $13.5 billion makes only 3% of the Saudi Arabia's non-oil GDP. So in reality, Saudi Arabia's non-oil GDP is still heavily dependent on state-driven internal spending rather than sustainable international income. And here's the bigger problem. A huge chunk of those local investments are directly tied to NEOM and similar megaprojects, meaning if you take away these government-funded construction projects, Saudi Arabia's non-oil economy suddenly looks much weaker. In other words, the government is technically increasing jobs and GDP, but much of it is artificial stimulation created by state spending, and eventually these projects need to become profitable. Saudi Arabia cannot endlessly pour money into giant futuristic cities without getting serious returns back. But even if the infrastructure somehow gets completed, there's another huge question. Who is actually going to live there? The line is mostly supposed to be populated by immigrants and international talent. Historically, the kingdom has a net migration rate of 6.7 per 1,000 residents, which means 244,000 immigrants, and that number is nowhere near enough for the scale of population growth these projects require. Saudi Arabia knows this too. That is why they've started streamlining visa processes and have introduced initiatives like Premium Residency Program and Entrepreneurship Visa. They are offering scholarships, incentives, and residency programs to attract global talent. On paper, this strategy sounds impressive, but the question is simple. Will the world's brightest students, entrepreneurs, and innovators actually want to permanently move to Saudi Arabia? Young, skilled professionals today are usually socially liberal. They want freedom, openness, and cultural flexibility. And Saudi Arabia still struggles with that image. It still has a law of male guardianship. Women have definitely gained more freedoms in recent years, but many restrictions still exist. Women still needs man's permission for marriage, divorce, and for even traveling with children. And even if some people move there for financial opportunities, many may only stay temporarily rather than permanently building their lives there. The kingdom's legal environment still feels too restrictive for many outsiders. Saudi Arabia is ranked third globally for executions. That reputation matters when trying to attract global talent, because when highly skilled workers compare destinations, they compare lifestyles too. In places like Dubai or Singapore, there is more cultural flexibility, nightlife, entertainment, and fewer restrictions on daily life. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia is also criticized heavily for labor conditions. According to reports, around 21,000 workers have died working at the NEOM projects. If true, those numbers are horrifying, and they reinforce global criticism that these futuristic cities are being built through extremely harsh labor systems. The irony is unbelievable. Saudi Arabia wants to create ultra-modern futuristic cities while still operating under systems and traditions many outsiders consider outdated, and the challenges are not just external. Saudi Arabia itself faces a domestic skill issue. Saudi Arabia has also been caught artificially ranking their universities higher. That raises concerns about whether the country currently has enough local talent and educational infrastructure to sustain a high-tech innovation economy independently. And then there's sports. Saudi Arabia spent billions trying to buy global attention through entertainment and tourism. One example was LIV Golf. They created a rival to the PGA Tour and spent absurd amounts of money bringing elite golfers into the league. LEV reportedly guaranteed players massive contracts regardless of performance, and financially it became a disaster. In its first year it lost around $250 million, and then the next year it lost $400 million. The same thing happened in football. Saudi Arabia managed to attract huge names like Cristiano Ronaldo and Karim Benzema, but attention does not automatically create sustainable sports culture. The spectators, engagement, and organic football ecosystem still lag behind Europe. And globally, criticism keeps growing. These NEOM projects are being called delusional by the world. Although the prince named it Vision 2030, the analysts believe that it could take 50 years to complete. And perhaps the biggest warning sign of all, Saudi Arabia has also failed to attract foreign investment. That is extremely dangerous because projects this massive cannot survive forever on domestic funding alone. Saudi Arabia also claimed that these architectural designs would reduce carbon emissions and create sustainable living, but environmental experts dispute those claims too. The line alone will produce 1.8 billion tons of embodied carbon dioxide. So now the world is left wondering something very simple. Is Saudi Arabia genuinely building the future, or is it building the world's most expensive fantasy project? Because there is a difference between ambition and delusion. And right now, Saudi Arabia seems trapped somewhere between the two. Subscribe to our channel and don't forget to click the bell icon.